Fantasy Fanfiction. Marvel's Hogwarts Wizards. Chapter 1. New York, Queens, a yellow school bus full of elementary school students. Sitting in the last row, the handsome little boy with brown hair, watching the news report on the TV in front of the school bus, couldn't help but sigh a long time. Iron Man, I didn't expect that this is really the extremely dangerous Marvel movie world. I said, why Captain America in elementary school textbooks looks so familiar. He has been living safely for 11 years. I almost thought something was wrong. It turned out that what was reported on TV at this time was the big news that Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries, admitted in front of the media that he was Iron Man some time ago. The little boy's name is Jerry Carmen. He is 11 years old this year and is a primary school student who is about to enter junior high school. Of course, this is just his identity in this life. In fact, he is a time traveler. It has been 11 years since he passed away unexpectedly in his previous life and came to this world. Originally, he thought that he had just crossed over to a foreign country, but through various signs such as TV, textbooks, and some slightly deviated historical stories, it seemed that it was not as simple as he imagined. It wasn't until some time ago, when the famous Iron Man was reported on all the news, that he was completely sure that this was really the frightening Marvel movie world that was said to destroy half of the universe with a snap of his fingers. In fact, Jerry didn't know much about the Marvel series of movies in his previous life. At first, I watched the 3 Spider-Man films played by Maguire, but I heard from colleagues who were Marvel fans later that they were not quite the same as the Spider-Man in the Marvel series. However, he still watched the first part of Avengers, because when it was released, his colleague who was also a single dog was not accompanied by anyone, so he specially paid for it out of his own pocket to ask him to watch it with him. He thought that he would go without money anyway. Others are watching some clips while listening to a certain sound, or listening to some colleagues who are Marvel fans talking about some of them. For example, 7 or 8 years later, there will be a purple sweet potato spirit who snapped his fingers and wiped out half of the creatures in the entire universe including the Earth. The ice and snow demon god dormant in a remote place of extreme cold, come here at my call. Oh black blizzard that freezes everything. Turn everything into white snow, frozen formation. Just when Jerry was deep in thought, thinking about the future, a majestic but immature voice suddenly rang in his ears. Turning his head away, suddenly a bunch of bubbles hit his face. Aisha, as I said, you can't play with bubble wands in the school bus, otherwise the teacher will be upset. Jerry looked at the blonde girl sitting inside holding a magic bubble wand and shooting bubbles at him, with a look of helplessness on his face. HMPH, you demon Jerry from the abyss, let me, the Ice Queen Elsa, finish you off. Frozen waves of ice. The little blonde girl was not moved by Jerry's words at all, but took the magic bubble wand and continued to shoot bubbles at Jerry. How can the beautiful Ice and Snow Queen succumb to the devil? 3. Humph. The blonde girl sitting next to Jerry is called Aisha Hathaway, 10 years old this year, and she is Jerry's younger sister in this life. Since I was a child, I have loved watching animations related to magic, and I often imagined myself as a magic princess or queen. In Jerry's words, it's just a bit of a second disease. However, Jerry also felt that there was nothing wrong with it. As a child, when he was his age in his previous life, he would often hold a branch as a sword and play Dugu 9 swords on the dirt road after school. He even once flaunted a small piece of rapeseed field of a neighbor in the village, and was chased by his mother for 3 miles with a broom. Sometimes when I think about the embarrassing things I did when I was a child, it is also embarrassing to be able to find a 2-bedroom and 1 living room. Ha ha ha, since you have discovered it, then I will not hide it. I am the demon lord Jerry from the abyss, Ice Queen Aisha, take my move, the dark claw of death. Seeing that normal speaking could not handle his younger sister, Jerry had no choice but to join in. While tickling the little girl, while she was giggling, he secretly snatched her magic bubble wand and stuffed it into his school bag. Stab. Suddenly, the school bus slammed on the brakes, and the strong inertia made Jerry, who was playing with his sister, almost thrown out of his seat. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough. While firmly grasping the handle next to him to stabilize his body, he hugged his sister who was also about to be thrown out. However, the other children were not so good. Many of them either fell out of their seats, or their heads hit the window glass due to inertia, and they burst into tears. "Mr. Paul, what's going on?" Teacher Bailey, who was in charge of escorting them in the school bus, quickly got up and helped the crying children back to their seats and comforted them. Seeing this, Jerry also told his sister to go down to help. A car suddenly blocked the way, and I almost hit it. Paul, the middle-aged man driving the school bus, replied angrily. Bang, 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 bang. At this moment, several gunshots were heard from the door of the school bus, and then the door was forcibly kicked open several times. "Don't move around, be honest, or don't blame me for blowing your heads." A muscular man wearing a mask, nearly 2 meters tall, broke into the school bus with a rifle and shouted sharply. Then, 3 more men wearing masks and holding weapons walked in, but they were still carrying 3 large bags full of them. No way, such bad luck. The moment Jerry heard the gunshot, he had a premonition that something was wrong, and immediately returned to his seat to protect his sister inside. Sure enough, the next scene fulfilled his bad expectations. "Drive away from here and go to the suburbs, or I'll blow your head off." The strong man put the rifle in his hand on the head of the driver Paul, and ordered fiercely. "Okay, I'll be right away." Having been held to the head with a gun by a strong man, Paul dared not obey. He immediately started the school bus, reversed the car, turned around and drove towards the suburbs. At this time, the siren of a police car behind him also came. "This is a school bus, they dare not fight back, you two open the windows at the back and hit me hard." A masked man who followed the strong man into the bus pointed a weapon at Belle, the only teacher on the school bus, and gave instructions to the other two. The other 2 masked men nodded when they heard the words, and when they came to the back and opened the glass window, they turned on the crazy output mode for the police cars that were chasing them. Jerry put his arms around his sister Aisha, and leaned against the back seat. Hearing the roar of the guns next to him and the excited growls of the 2 masked men, his heart was pounding nervously. Although he had practiced martial arts for several years because of his hobbies in his previous life, it would be no problem to beat up 2 or 3 gangsters. In this life, he has paid great attention to exercising his body since he was a child, and almost no one of his age is his opponent. But after all, he has just turned 11 years old this year, and his physical fitness is not at the same level as these robbers. There is a good saying, if you talk about fighting without physical fitness, you are considered a hooligan. What's more, each of these robbers had guns in their hands. "Demon Lord Jerry, are those your demons? Give me back my wand quickly, and let me, Ice Queen Elsa, punish them with magic." Aisha, who was protected by Jerry, stretched out her little head excitedly, and began to touch the direction of Jerry's school bag with her little hand. "I said sister, you are a real tiger." Without saying a word, Jerry pressed Aisha's little head down again. Looking at the situation, it's hard to count on the police. You have to rely on yourself. Listening to the gradually decreasing and distant sirens, Jerry couldn't help sighing, and then his eyes narrowed, and a virtual panel appeared in front of him. Because some content has been slightly modified, some comments may disappear. This strange virtual panel appeared inexplicably on the first day he was reborn in this world. And only he can see it. After so many years of research and the introduction on the panel, he has almost figured out the general purpose of this panel. First of all, as long as he does good deeds, this panel will accumulate little red stars for him, and when the little red stars accumulate to 5,000, they can be exchanged for special wizard blood for him, and then send him to the parallel world to learn magic. And according to the introduction on the panel, when he went to the parallel world to learn magic, the time of the main world he was in would also enter a static state. For so many years, Jerry has been working hard to do some good things within his ability, such as helping the grandmother cross the road, helping neighbors with disabilities to take out the trash, beating up classmates who like to bully others, and volunteering to take on some housework and so on. In addition, because of the soul of an adult, his studies in school are naturally among the best. Therefore, no matter in the eyes of relatives at home, neighbors, or teachers at school, he is a very exemplary good boy, and he is also a child of other people's family. And he also found that although this panel will reward Little Red Star for doing good deeds, but if he does bad things, there is no punishment. For example, stealing things, snatching children's lollipops, etc., the panel will not deduct his little red star because of this. 6,000. Looking at the number of little red stars he had accumulated on the panel at this time, Jerry took a deep breath, and then clicked the exchange button next to it. In fact, as early as half a year ago, he had already accumulated enough little red stars, which could be exchanged for wizard blood and enter the parallel small world. But he has been hesitating whether to exchange it. Because it was written on the panel that if he died in the parallel world, he would also die in the main world, and if he was injured in the parallel world, his body would still be injured after returning. Although the family he belongs to now is not rich, it is also considered a petty bourgeoisie. In addition, he can be regarded as living a new life, study hard, and his living standard in the future will not be too bad. Is it really necessary to take risks in an unknown wizarding world? Compared with thrilling adventures, Jerry actually prefers a peaceful life in his heart. His dream in his previous life was to have a car and a house, to have a gentle and considerate wife, to eat hot food after get off work, and to travel with his wife and children during the holidays. And happy family. It's a pity that those things are not easy for a child from the countryside. He didn't save enough money for the down payment until his unexpected death in his previous life. But now, he has determined that the world he is in is the dangerous Marvel world. And the roar of the submachine gun next to him made him understand that if he didn't have some power of his own, then he and his family in this life would be really insecure. Although Jerry likes a peaceful life, it doesn't mean he is bloodless. Confirm the exchange of wizard blood, and start implanting. Implanted successfully, start extracting parallel small worlds. Successfully extracted the parallel small world of Harry Potter, and began to implant identity. Identity implantation is successful, start to enter. The experience time of entering the small world for the first time is 1 month. If you need to continue to experience in the future, please use the little red star to exchange time. As lines of words appeared on the panel, Jerry found that the world he was in seemed to have entered a static state in an instant, and his eyes were darkened, and he gradually lost consciousness. 1991, August 1st. In an orphanage in the small town of Winton, Surrey, London, a little brown-haired boy slowly sat up from the bed. I didn't expect it to be the world of Harry Potter. Fortunately, I have seen all the movies in this series. The little boy rubbed his dizzy temples and let out a long breath of relief. Originally, he thought he would go to a strange magical world, but he didn't expect it to be the world of Harry Potter, which made Jerry feel a little more happy. Although due to the long time, his memory of many details has been blurred, but he still has an impression of the general plot direction. In this world, as long as he stayed away from the Iron Boys trio, at least until Voldemort was resurrected, he was still very safe. And Voldemort's resurrection should be 4 or 5 years away from this time. Feeling that his head was not so dizzy, Jerry began to sort out some information about his identity in this world that was instilled in his mind. He is also called Jerry Carmen in this world, but he has no family and is an orphan called Edward Orphanage. Some other information is a brief introduction about the orphanage staff and some orphans, and then there is no more. Let's familiarize ourselves with the environment first. After putting on his shoes and clothes, Jerry was about to open the door and leave the room, when there was a ding-ding knocking on the glass at the window. Turning his head, he saw a gray long-eared owl with a letter in its mouth, tapping its claws on the closed window. Could it be that it's here so soon? Jerry quickly turned around and came to the window, opened the window and let the owl in. The owl flew into the house, put the envelope on the table, and hooted at Jerry, as if asking for something to eat. Jerry looked around, then took out his pocket, shrugged at the owl, and showed an awkward but polite smile. Seeing this, the owl hooted again towards Jerry, as if to say, "Bad luck," then spread its wings and flew away from the window. This, unexpectedly, on the first day after coming here, I was despised by an owl. Shaking his head helplessly, Jerry stepped forward and picked up the letter lying on the table. The material of the envelope is not ordinary double adhesive paper, but made of relatively retro parchment paper. On the front of the envelope are a few lines written in a strange emerald green color. Recipient: Jerry Kamen. Address: Mr. Jerry Kamen, on the 2nd floor of Edward Orphanage, Winton Township, Surrey. Open the back again, and a familiar wax seal is on it. There is a pattern on the top of the wax seal, with a large letter, H, in the middle, surrounded by a lion, an eagle, a badger and a snake around the letter. When the envelope was opened, 2 pieces of parchment were revealed. One was written on the first-year Hogwarts freshmen, all the books, necessities and precautions that needed to be purchased. The other one is relative to the official Hogwarts acceptance letter. Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Federation of Wizards, First-Class Great Magician of Sir Merlin, Chief Magician of Wizengamot. Dear Mr. Jerry Kamen, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st, and I will visit the Edward Orphanage in person at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and get your reply letter back. Vice Chancellor. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. Putting away the acceptance letter from Hogwarts, Jerry muttered to himself. All right, if you start early, you will be able to go to Diagon Alley to buy magic books and learn magic earlier, so that when you go back a month later, you will be able to deal with those robbers with guns. The next day, Jerry got up early when he knew that Professor McGonagall was coming to visit. After receiving the Hogwarts admission letter yesterday, he took a rough tour of the entire orphanage. According to the information provided in his mind, this orphanage named Edward was established by a businessman named Edward 20 years ago before his death. The original intention of the building was to rescue those poor orphans who were abandoned for various reasons. Unfortunately, after the old man died, things changed a little. However, it's not particularly bad, it's just that the meals and treatment of the orphans have been reduced a lot, and the staff of the orphanage are not as friendly as before. Jerry felt that this was also human nature. In this day and age, there is no child abuse in places like orphanages, which is considered pretty good. After all, some orphanages are orphanages in name, but behind the scenes, they don't know what they are illegal institutions. There is a saying, the prosperity of the world is for profit, and the chaos of the world is for profit. No one is absolutely selfless except the great saints. He himself is not like this, except for those he cares about. If there is no certain benefit, he will not do some thankless things. Before, he had been working hard to do good deeds and actively help others. His original intention was only for Little Red Star. If there is no Little Red Star, presumably he will not take the initiative to help those strangers who do not know. When he was going to school, if he saw someone fall down on the road, he would step forward to help him. A few years after he came out to work, when he saw someone fall, he would only choose to take a detour. After all, the price of going forward may be his salary for a year of hard work. But to live this life again, to be honest, the many good people and good deeds he did because he wanted to earn a Little Red Star did have some impact on him. Because he found that when he was truly appreciated by others, it did make him feel some happiness inexplicably, although he didn't want to admit it. After queuing up for a simple breakfast, Jerry came to the large yard at the front door of the orphanage. He remembered that Professor McGonagall was animagus, who liked to turn into a tabby cat when he went out to the Muggle world, so he guarded in the front yard. Maybe he could see the miraculous scene of a cat turning into a human in a while. Half an hour later, Jerry, who was hiding in a corner and watching for cats on the surrounding walls, frowned and looked towards the right side of the large yard. There, 3 teenagers around the age of 13 or 14 were laughing and pushing an 8 or 9-year-old boy to the ground, laughing at him non-stop. Through memory, Jerry knows that these 3 13-year-old boys are the 3 oldest children in this orphanage. Their favorite thing is to bully the younger orphans by relying on their physical strength. If there is any orphan who is unwilling to listen to them, then I am afraid that they will be bullied by them for a long time, and even fight with each other. So the children in the orphanage were very afraid of these 3 boys. At this time, when they saw the little boy being pushed and laughed at, they didn't dare to stop them at all. In fact, there were also victims before, who told the staff of the orphanage about this situation, but the staff did not take it seriously. They just warned the 3 of them verbally, but the victim who made a small report was retaliated by the 3 teenagers for a long time. For the staff of these orphanages, as long as the orphans did not suffer any serious injuries, they basically didn't care about anything. Fighting among children was not a big deal in their opinion. As for the little boy who was beaten now, he was transferred to the orphanage only recently, so he was targeted by these three teenagers. After thinking about it for a while, Jerry didn't step forward. He felt that even if he went to help the boy now, the little boy would still be bullied when he left the orphanage and went to Hogwarts. Besides, there is no benefit. When the time comes to fight, the visiting Professor McGonagall may have a bad impression after seeing it. However, when he heard the arrogant laughter of the three teenagers, and that the boy was surrounded because of his stubbornness, he might be about to suffer a meal, so he finally stood up with a sigh. I'm not soft-hearted, I just want to test it out. If you do good deeds in this world, you can also get little red star. Yes, this is just a necessary experiment. After underestimating a few words, Jerry stepped forward quickly and shouted. Stop. Following Jerry's voice, the three teenagers stopped involuntarily, then turned to look at Jerry who was walking, showing a surprised look. They didn't expect that among the children in the orphanage, there would be someone who dared to yell at them, especially the usually taciturn Jerry. Looks like you want to be like this new kid too. The three temporarily let go of the little boy whose eyes were already tearing up, and walked up to Jerry with malicious intentions. It is understandable for the newcomers to be disobedient, but if someone like Jerry who has been in the orphanage for 5 or 6 years dares to resist them, then he must be punished severely. Otherwise, how can they deter other orphans? Everyone is an orphan, it's not easy, why do such a thing? Looking at the three teenagers who were a full head taller than himself, Jerry said lightly. Except for a few children who grow up in orphanages, most of them will have some psychological problems. Those who just feel inferior are nothing, they are afraid of this kind of psychological inferiority, but they want to gain a sense of accomplishment through abuse and bullying other people who are weaker than themselves. Wrong, in my eyes, you are all just rubbish, making you happy is your greatest role. Among the three teenagers, the fattest and tallest one looked around and then gave a mocking look. Although I don't want to bully children, but if I don't teach you a lesson, you may have trouble in the future. At this time, Jerry also figured it out. He had to stay in the orphanage for a month before school started. With the personalities of these three people, even without today's incident, they would still have conflicts with him sooner or later. That being the case, it is better to subdue them at once, which can be regarded as saving some troubles in the future. Shaking his head, Jerry took off his coat and t-shirt casually, and put them on the table beside him, revealing a lean body. Although Jerry was only 11 years old at this time, and his height was less than 1.4 meters, his muscles were very strong. And it's not the kind of big muscles trained by fitness experts, but the kind of small muscle groups that are like steel bars. So this also makes him look a little thin when he puts on his clothes, but he looks like a different person after taking off his clothes. Without the delay of work and the trouble of going to school, he really has a lot of time to exercise in this life. In fact, he has always been interested in martial arts in his previous life. When he was a child, he could play with a stick for a long time, and he thought he was a peerless master. When I was a little older, I fell in love with Jeet Kune Do again because I watched Bruce Lee's movies. I even used my pocket money to buy a Jeet Kune Do manual to practice secretly. When I was in college, I even joined the martial arts club, and got some relatively orthodox guidance, and even participated in competitions on behalf of the club and won awards. It's just that after graduation, I was too busy with work, so it was abandoned. After being reborn in this life, without the pressure of life, he began to exercise his body early on, and only then did he have the lean muscles he has now. Although he couldn't deal with the burly gun-wielding robbers in the school bus, he couldn't deal with these 13 or 14-year-old boys. Moreover, since he was fused with the blood of the wizard, he felt that his body seemed to have undergone some wonderful changes. It doesn't mean that the strength has become stronger or the speed has become faster, but a feeling that the essence of life has been sublimated. Also, although the physical strength of wizards is not much stronger than that of ordinary people, they are very durable. Missing arms and legs often happen. As long as they don't die immediately, they can persist until they can be reconnected with magic and potions. Oh, what is this idiot doing? Does he think he can beat us with his clothes off? The leading fat boy laughed. I feel that his small body wants to have a close contact with my fist. Another boy flashed his sandbag-sized fist maliciously, and then punched Jerry in the stomach. Obviously, at this age they still don't understand what it means to be a boy with 8-pack abs. The fourth form of Golden Dragon Fist, Xiaolong asks the way. Jerry retreated with a sliding step to avoid the attack, and then kicked the boy's waist as fast as lightning. It turned out that with just one kick, he fell to the ground. The dragon wags its tail. After kicking, he didn't stop at all, followed by a coherent swing of his legs, slamming on the face of the boy on the other side who hadn't reacted yet, and quickly knocked down one again. Although Jerry is only 11 years old, his muscles and strength are much stronger than those of the 13 or 14-year-old boys in front of him. In addition, he has practiced Jeet Kune Do hard these years, and he is already familiar with many moves. He is even better than when he was playing in universities in the world. These few teenagers who only bully the weak all day long are naturally not opponents. Seeing the two younger brothers screaming and falling to the ground, the fat boy in the lead roared and ran towards Jerry. He is a head taller than Jerry, and his body is more than twice as big as Jerry. He believes that as long as he bumps into the opponent, and then there is another overwhelming pressure, the opponent will never move. Too naive. Facing the leading fat boy who bumped into him, Jerry sneered, and instead of dodging, he sneaked forward, cut into the middle line of the fat boy, took a deep breath, kicked his right foot on the ground, twisted his waist, extended his hips, and shoved his shoulders. Punch. Inch punch. A powerful force exploded in an instant, directly hitting the fat boy's abdomen, knocking him backwards 2 meters away and sitting on the ground. Seeing the orphanage trio screaming and screaming on the ground after being hit by Jerry 3 times, the other orphans who were watching were stunned. They didn't expect that the usually scary trio would have such a situation today, and they didn't expect the usually taciturn Jerry to be so powerful. What are you waiting for? Revenge for those who have hatred, revenge for those who have resentment. Picking up the clothes and putting them on again, Jerry reminded the other orphans who were still in a daze. I just took off my clothes just because I was worried about not getting dirty. After all, Professor McGonagall will come to visit my home later, so I can't get all dusty. It's just that he somewhat overestimated the 3 teenagers. The 3 teenagers who rely on bullying the weak to gain pleasure and inner comfort don't have any bloodliness, just hit him once, and they are so painful on the ground that they dare not fight him again. In fact, if the 3 teenagers were more bloody, enduring the pain and working together to besiege him, it would really cost him some hands and feet. Hearing Jerry's reminder, those orphans who were used to being bullied suddenly had their eyes lit up. After looking at each other, they began to cautiously approach the 3 wailing teenagers on the ground, and then, looking at the 3 teenagers who were beaten and kicked by the orphans, Jerry couldn't help sighing. Unity is strength. Jerry held back a little bit of strength when he shot just now. With the obese bodies of the 3 teenagers, there shouldn't be any serious problems at this time. But facing the beatings of dozens of orphans, they were no match at all, and they were beaten all over their heads very quickly. 2 or 3 orphans are definitely no match for the 3 teenagers, but if there are dozens of orphans together, even if the 3 teenagers are older and better equipped, they will definitely be no match for them. Once the fear in your heart is broken, you will find that the guy who is so tall and invincible is actually nothing. When Jerry knocked down the trio in the orphanage, most of the orphans' fear of the trio was eliminated. Now after this round of beatings, I believe that even if Jerry is not in the orphanage, they will no longer be afraid of the trio. There are really little red stars in the money. After getting dressed, Jerry opened the panel and was a little surprised to see that the number of little red stars on the panel changed from 1000 after crossing to 1005. Originally, he thought that the little red star could only be obtained in the main world, but he didn't expect to be able to get it after entering the small world. In this way, it would be quite good, at least there is another world to get the little red star. After closing the panel, when Jerry looked towards the school gate again, he found a tabby cat, who had already stood on the top of the wall at some point, poking his head to observe something. This one can't be changed by Professor McGonagall. Jerry turned his head away pretending to be calm, then rolled his eyes, and shouted at the orphans. Okay, you can stop. When the orphans heard the words, they immediately stopped beating the 3 teenagers. Facing Jerry, who had easily defeated the 3 teenagers just now, they were still very convinced. Ahem, Jerry Carmen, am a person who hates violence very much. I hope that we orphans who are suffering from the same disease can continue to strive for self-improvement, help each other in friendship, and work together. In the future, we will be useful talents to society, and we will shine a bright light on the future. 1,000 points of light. When the orphans heard the words, although they didn't quite understand, they still applauded very applaudingly. Jerry nodded, and then said to the three teenagers with bruised noses and swollen faces. Before, you took advantage of your age to do evil in the orphanage and bully other younger orphans. Today is a lesson for you. We are all orphans, as long as you know your mistakes and correct them, everyone will accept you in the future, don't you agree? Quote. Seeing Jerry's dangerous eyes, the three teenagers with bruised noses and swollen faces didn't dare to neglect, and hurriedly replied. Ah, that's right. In the room of the orphanage, Jerry recalled the words he said in the yard before, and felt that Professor McGonagall should not have a bad impression. Although he shot and beat up several teenagers, he also explained the reason just now, which can be regarded as an act of righteousness. Clang, 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 coming. Jerry's eyes lit up when he heard the knock on the door, and he got up and opened the door immediately. It was the current director of the Edward Orphanage who knocked on the door, and beside him stood a lady in her 50s or 60s wearing square glasses, a Scottish shirt and a green robe. Mrs. McGonagall, this is the Jerry Carmen you're looking for. The dean's tone revealed respect, but Jerry saw a trace of fear from his expression. Apparently, after Professor McGonagall came to the orphanage, he first explained the reason to the director of the orphanage and showed off his ability as a wizard. Okay, Dean Brian, please lead the way. Next, I want to talk to Mr. Carmen alone. No problem, then I'll go first. The dean nodded quickly, and left the room in a hurry. Hello, Mr. Carmen. Professor McGonagall closed the door and walked into the room, first greeting Jerry. Jerry looked at Professor McGonagall and asked politely. Hi, may I ask who you are? I'm the Vice Principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and your future Transfiguration teacher. You can call me Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall explained. Jerry immediately pretended to be enlightened. It turns out that you wrote the letter sent by the owl yesterday, but, does magic really exist in this world? And where is Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Little wizards who grew up in a muggle environment will have similar doubts when they receive the admission notice. McGonagall was already used to this, and knew how to quickly gain the little wizard's trust. Flaviv. She drew out her wand, pointed at the cup on the table in the room, and a ray of magic light shot out, and the cup immediately turned into a fat big orange cat. Magic has always existed. When you were growing up, you should have had some incredible experiences. Those are the powers that originate from the blood in your body. And Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is a school that teaches you how to learn and control magic. Watching Professor McGonagall's demonstration of magic, Jerry couldn't help but widen his eyes. Although he had watched movies on TV in his previous life, when he saw a person waving his hand and turning a cup into a cat, the effect was completely different. Turning non-living substances into living substances in an instant, Jerry thinks, this is indeed very magical. 20 minutes later. That's about it. Is there anything else you want to ask? Seeing that Jerry believed her completely, McGonagall asked finally. Professor, although I really want to go to Hogwarts to study magic, you should know that I don't have the ability to pay the tuition. Jerry thought for a while and asked his own question. He remembered that the little wizard born in a Muggle family in the movie could exchange Muggle coins to Gringotts for galleons, but he guessed that the orphanage he was in would not be willing to give him money to go to Hogwarts go to school. Professor McGonagall showed a smile on his face. You don't have to worry about this, the school will provide you with a bursary for your normal studies, and you can pay it off after you graduate and work. Okay, then I have no problem. Jerry nodded. Professor McGonagall had already explained the general situation. He understood some key things because of his memory, so he understood them quickly. Very good, Mr. Carmen, it seems that you are not only very brave, but also have a strong understanding ability. Professor McGonagall looked at Jerry, who was very calm, with a look of satisfaction in his eyes. On the fence of the orphanage before, Professor McGonagall witnessed the whole process of the bullying incident in the yard. And Jerry's performance at that time also made her look a little different. She felt that the bravery and responsibility shown by the 11-year-old child at that time, as well as the positive spirit in his words, were not possessed by many adult wizards today. If you use one sentence to summarize Professor McGonagall's views on Jerry at this time, it is: "This son will become a great weapon in the future." Okay, since you already understand and are willing to study magic at Hogwarts, today I will take you to Diagon Alley and buy all the things you need to start school. Professor McGonagall took out his pocket watch, checked the time, and stood up from his seat. Diagon Alley. Jerry had a surprised look on his face. It's not that he doesn't know what Diagon Alley is, it's just that he didn't expect Professor McGonagall to take him to buy school supplies after his home visit. But after thinking about it for a while, he understood again. A young wizard from a normal wizarding family definitely does not need to be taken to Diagon Alley by a Hogwarts teacher. And little wizards in Muggle families also have parents, so as long as they make it clear to their parents, there is naturally no problem. Every time Hermione went to Diagon Alley to buy school supplies, her parents accompanied her there. And he is now an orphan. If Professor McGonagall doesn't take him to Diagon Alley, who will take him? It would be unreliable to expect the director of the orphanage to be an employee. That's a street that sells wizard items. You need to go there to buy all the items you need to go to school. Professor McGonagall thought that Jerry didn't know what Diagon Alley was, so he explained it a little. Then how do we get there? By train. Jerry remembered that Diagon Alley seemed to be somewhere in the city of London, and the small town of Winton where he was located was not that close to the city of London. No, grab my arm, it may feel uncomfortable for a while, you need to be patient. McGonagall offered Jerry an arm without much explanation. Could it be? Jerry's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately thought of something. Sure enough, when Jerry grabbed Professor McGonagall's arm, he saw Professor McGonagall take out his wand again and whispered. The follower appears. Suddenly, Jerry only felt that Professor McGonagall's arm seemed to break free from his own, so he quickly grabbed it tightly. After a crackling sound like firecrackers, Jerry's surroundings instantly became pitch black, followed by strong squeezes from all directions. I couldn't breathe at all, and my chest seemed to be tightly strangled by several iron hoops. His eyeballs were pushed back into his head, and his eardrums were pushed deep into his skull. This feeling is like being squeezed out of a very narrow rubber tube. As if after a long time, and as if only for a moment, light appeared in his eyes again. Taking a few deep breaths to ease the dizziness in his brain, he turned his head and looked around. He and Professor McGonagall were no longer in the room of the orphanage, but appeared on a street. Are you okay? Professor McGonagall asked with some concern. Jerry smiled and waved his hands. I'm fine, just a little dizzy. Where is it? He knew that what Professor McGonagall just cast should be the advanced magic that only adult wizards can learn, apparition, and its branch follower appearance. Apparition is simply teleportation. As long as it is a place you have been to, you can teleport it in your mind. It is one of the ways wizards travel. However, it is not an easy task to learn apparition. Many adult wizards cannot perform apparition perfectly, and one might be torn apart by the power of space. Moreover, the apparition distance is also related to the magic power in the wizard's body and the proficiency of this magic. Some wizards may only apparate for hundreds of kilometers, while some can apparate directly from one city to another. Professor McGonagall obviously belongs to the latter, but she also used the apparition she just used at the same time as the follower apparition, not only can teleport directly, but also teleport people. It's just that Jerry thought that Professor McGonagall would take him directly to Diagon Alley, but now it seems that he appeared on a Muggle street. Charing Cross Street, London, this is an entrance from Muggle Street to Diagon Alley. You have to remember the name and location of this street, because next time you come to Diagon Alley, you need to come here by yourself. It turns out that in the eyes of Professor McGonagall, Jerry is a child who knows nothing about the wizarding world, so it is natural to take him to experience the process of a normal wizard entering Diagon Alley, so that he can enter Diagon Alley independently in the future. Look at that bar over there, it's the entrance to Diagon Alley. Following the direction of Professor McGonagall's finger, Jerry's gaze crossed a luxury movie theater, a popular hamburger restaurant, and finally settled in the middle of a large bookstore and a record store on the other side. It was a very dirty and small bar, with only an old wooden door and a cracked sign hanging on the door, with a few words written crookedly on the sign, "Leaky Cauldron." Although this small bar, located in the middle of a clean and tidy bookstore and record company, seems very abrupt. But all the pedestrians passing by turned a blind eye to it, as if they couldn't see it at all. Jerry knew that ordinary muggles really couldn't see this small bar, because it was cast by wizards to repel muggles, a spell that made muggles without wizard blood unable to detect and approach it. Jingle. As the bell rang when the wooden door was pushed open, Jerry was pulled by Professor McGonagall into the Leaky Cauldron. The interior of the bar was very dark, and there were not many customers. After a quick glance, only 7 or 8 wizards in wizard robes were drinking and chatting. When the bell rang, all the wizards in the bar turned their gazes over. When they saw that it was Professor McGonagall, they all nodded politely. As the vice principal of Hogwarts and the dean of Gryffindor College, Professor McGonagall is quite well known in the entire wizarding world, and many wizards nowadays can actually be regarded as her students. Jerry remembers that when he watched Where Are the Fantastic Beasts? In his previous life, in Newt's memory, Professor McGonagall was already a teacher at Hogwarts at that time. In other words, Professor McGonagall has been a teacher at Hogwarts for at least 50 years, and he has taught countless students. "Oh, it's Professor McGonagall, do you need a drink?" At this time, an old wizard with nearly stripped hair and a blunted walnut-like appearance on the counter greeted Professor McGonagall with a smile. "No, Tom, I'm sending freshmen to Diagon Alley." Professor McGonagall waved his hand and refused. Since her husband Elphinstone died unexpectedly due to poisonous tentacle bites, she hardly ever leaves Hogwarts, let alone stay outside Hogwarts, except for the annual home visits before school starts. This guy shouldn't be too young. As Jerry followed Professor McGonagall through the bar to the backyard, he glanced at Tom, the bar owner just now, and thought to himself. He remembered in the movie that when Voldemort entered school, this guy was already the owner of the Leaky Cauldron, and he had the same name as Voldemort, both named Tom. The backyard of the Leaky Cauldron, under the green brick wall next to the trash can. Professor McGonagall tapped his wand on the wall 3 times and explained to Jerry. "Look, just like this, count 3 blocks above the trash can, count 2 blocks to the left, then tap 3 times with your wand, and the entrance to Diagon Alley appears." As Professor McGonagall withdrew his wand, the knocked blue brick suddenly trembled, and the whole wall started to reorganize rapidly following the shaking of the blue brick, as if some mechanism had been triggered. Soon, a small hole appeared in the middle of the blue brick wall, and then the hole became bigger and bigger. Before long, there appeared in front of them an archway wide enough for 4 or 5 people to pass at the same time, and the archway led to a winding cobbled street with no end in sight. It is the shopping mecca for wizards in London, Diagon Alley. Following Professor McGonagall across the archway and into Diagon Alley, Jerry couldn't help feeling a little more excited. The scenes in the movie were reflected in reality. Even though he was mentally prepared, his eyes widened because of the magical scene in front of him. It's different from ordinary people who wear cool summer clothes outside, dress stylishly, and carry bags. Almost most of the street is full of wizards wearing wizard robes of various colors and holding wands in their hands. Of course, there are various wizarding pets, as well as individual house elves and goblins. Copper, brass, pewter, silver crucibles, complete models, automatic stirring, foldable, retractable, come in and have a look. Gray forest owl, Mingjiao owl, grass owl, brown owl, snow owl, there are all kinds of owls. The latest Nimbus 2000, the fastest broom, you deserve it. Dragon liver, bat spleen, eel eyeball, spell book, quill pen, parchment, medicine bottle, moon globe, the price is cheap. In front of the shops on both sides of the street, all kinds of small advertising signs were hung, and many excited little wizards were also crowded. "Have you brought your letter?" When he came to a shop called Partridge's Crucible, McGonagall looked down at the dazzled Jerry who was already watching. "Carry." Jerry pulled out the parchment envelope he had received yesterday from his pocket and gave Professor McGonagall a nod. Professor McGonagall nodded. "Okay, take out a list of essential supplies inside, and I'll take you to buy them one by one." Hearing this, Jerry took out the second page of letter paper from the envelope, unfolded it and read it. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Essential Supplies. 1. Uniform. 2. Textbooks. 3. Other equipment. 4. Description of pets. Parents are especially reminded that first-year freshmen are not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. The Hogwarts stipend is 100 galleons per year, and there is no need to go to Gringotts to pick it up. Professor McGonagall has already brought it during his home visit. There are 3 main currencies in the wizarding world: galleons, sickles and nuts. 1 gold galleon is equal to 17 silver sickles, and 1 silver sickle is equal to 29 copper gnats. Bad math means big head. There are a lot of things, Mr. Carmen. We may need to buy a big box first, and a small cart. Professor McGonagall pulled Jerry, who was looking around, through the dense crowd, and soon came to a shop selling sundries. In this store, Jerry bought a super large suitcase, a small cart, a set of glass or crystal vials, a telescope and a brass scale. Then they went to a crucible shop with a shiny Partridge sign and bought a crucible pewter, standard size too. What pet do you want, an owl, a cat or a toad? After coming out of the crucible store, Professor McGonagall looked at the owl store next to him and asked Jerry. Pet. Jerry had a thoughtful look on his face. In fact, Jerry really has no idea about keeping pets. After all, he didn't have the habit of keeping pets in his previous life. Little wizards now like owls, because they can help deliver letters and gifts, and they are relatively more practical. Professor McGonagall thought that Jerry didn't know much about pets, so he recommended the most popular pets at Hogwarts. Owl. Forget it, it's still a cat. I like cats better. Owls are indeed very practical for little wizards. They can help deliver letters and gifts. Relatively speaking, cats and toads seem to have no role other than eating. But Jerry knew that in a pet treatment shop in Diagon Alley, there was a cat with the blood of a cat named Crookshanks. It is the smartest cat evaluated by Sirius. Not only can it quickly detect corrupt or suspicious people, but it can also distinguish any magus who has turned into an animal form. Also, it is able to solve some problems on its own without help or guidance. As a person with secrets, Jerry felt that if he had to keep a pet, it would be nice to have such a cat. The point is, with Crookshanks present, Ron's mouse, Scabber, which was transformed from Peter Pettigrew, should not dare to approach him again. As for owls, there are public owls in the school that can be used. It doesn't cost money, so why raise one yourself? And there is also an owl post office outside. Cats. Few little wizards buy cats as pets now. Professor McGonagall was a little surprised when he heard Jerry's answer, but there was a smile on his face. As an animagus turned tabby wizard, Professor McGonagall certainly has a fondness for cats. It's just that it's popular among little wizards to buy owls as pets now, and owls are indeed more helpful to little wizards than cats, so she recommends Jerry to buy owls. However, if Jerry chooses a cat as a pet, she will be very happy. I prefer cats. Jerry shrugged and laughed. Okay, then we need to go to the magic zoo later. There are no other pets in this store except owls. Professor McGonagall gave a rare smile, and then took Jerry to Mrs. Magic Gold's robe shop opposite the owl shop. You go in and try on clothes first, I'll go next door and buy books for you, and then we'll go to the magic zoo ahead to buy pets. No problem. Jerry nodded and walked straight into Mrs. Magic Gold's robe shop. What a brave little guy. McGonagall saw that Jerry showed no cowardice except curiosity in this strange environment, and he didn't even hesitate to go to the store to try on clothes alone, so he couldn't help sighing secretly. Are you going to buy a Hogwarts school uniform, my dear? As soon as Jerry opened the door and walked into the store, a short and fat witch greeted him with a big smile. Yes, I need 3 sets of plain wizard robes, a plain peaked hat for daytime use, a pair of dragonhide protective gloves, and a black silver buttoned cloak for winter, thank you. Facing the inquiry from the chunky witch, Jerry politely said one by one according to the requirements he had seen on the parchment. Oh, don't worry, we have a lot of them here. To be honest, there is a little girl trying clothes here right now. The chubby witch smiled and pointed to the back of the shop. Jerry followed the chubby witch's fingers to see a little girl with thick, unkempt brown curly hair and a pair of rabbit-like front teeth was standing on the footstool. A witch next to her was pinning up her black robe and measuring something with a measuring tape. "Hey, did you go to Hogwarts too?" When Jerry stood on the footstool next to him and was also put on a black robe by the witch and began to measure, the little girl next to him asked him in a somewhat domineering tone. "Yes, I am a freshman this year." Jerry smiled. If Jerry was an 11-year-old boy, he would be a little offended if a girl his age spoke to him in an aggressive tone. But in fact, Jerry's previous life plus the 11 years after time travel, he is already an old man in his early 40s according to his age. So when he saw a little girl talking to him in a domineering tone, he only felt that the little girl was quite cute. "Me too, no one in my family knows magic, so when I got the offer I was utterly surprised, but also delighted, because, it's the best school I know. Magic school." The little girl seemed a bit talkative, so she chatted with Jerry while she was standing on the footstool and couldn't move. "It seems that you know quite a lot." Jerry complimented him very cooperatively. The little girl raised her chin proudly. "Of course, when that Professor McGonagall came to my house yesterday, I asked a lot of questions, and I have decided to memorize all the textbooks before the school starts, and I will definitely become the wizard with the best grades by then." "Oh, that's for sure. I can tell at a glance that you are not an ordinary person. You will definitely become an excellent wizard in the future. Come on." Jerry stretched out his hand from under the black robe, gave Xiao a thumbs up, and said with a smile in his heart. "What a funny little girl. Hermione, is your place all right? We've got everything except the textbooks now." At this moment, the store door was pushed open, and a middle-aged couple walked into the house with a trolley, shouting to the little girl who was chatting with Jerry. "Make friends, my name is Hermione Granger." Hermione took the initiative to extend her right hand to Jerry. She felt that the little boy in front of her was different from the other classmates she had met before, and seemed to fit her very well. Jerry Carmen. Hearing Hermione's introduction, Jerry froze for a moment, then smiled and reached out to shake her hand. "Jerry, I'm going to buy textbooks, see you when school starts." Hermione returned to her parents, waved to Jerry, and left Madame Malkin's robe shop. "See you at the beginning of school." When Hermione's family left completely, Jerry's face showed a puzzled expression. Does Hermione have big front teeth and thick, curly brown hair? This seemed a bit different from the image in the movies he had seen. He remembered that Hermione in the movie had no front teeth and was very beautiful. But speaking of it, if the little girl he met just now had her hair done and her front teeth straightened, she should be pretty too. After all, the little girl has big eyes, and her facial features are actually Jo Jung, but she doesn't know how to dress up and her image is ruined by her front teeth. "It's ready, dear." 10 minutes later, the chunky Mrs. Malkin also came to Jerry with a bag containing Hogwarts uniforms. "Okay, thank you." Jerry paid the fee, put the clothes into the suitcase, pulled the trolley and opened the door, and walked out of Mrs. Malkin's robe store. Professor McGonagall. As soon as he went out, Jerry saw Professor McGonagall walking towards him carrying a bag of magic books, and waved quickly. "Okay, now only pets and wands are left. Ollivander's wand shop is at the end of Diagon Alley, so let's go to the magic zoo first." Putting the magic book into the suitcase, Professor McGonagall took Jerry and the trolley and continued to walk along the streets of Diagon Alley. When passing by Florin's cold drinks, I also bought Jerry a barley ice cream, an ice cream that can taste 100 different flavors. That's Gringotts Bank, a wizarding bank run by goblins. If you need to store valuables in the future, you can also come to this bank. It's still very safe, probably. Professor McGonagall watched Jerry set his eyes on the tall white building on the right, and patiently explained to him. But halfway through the explanation, she suddenly remembered the theft of Gringotts yesterday, and her tone was no longer so sure. Jerry nodded in understanding. In fact, he wasn't looking at the bank just now, but just looking at the two goblins standing guard at the door of the bank, and lamenting how ugly the goblins in this world are. "By the way, Mr. Carmen, I want to warn you seriously, if you come to Diagon Alley alone in the future, please remember not to go to that alley." At this moment, Professor McGonagall suddenly looked serious and pointed to a narrow and dark alley opposite Gringotts. That is. Jerry's heart moved, and he already had a guess. Professor McGonagall replied with a straight face. That's Nocturne Alley, you just need to know that it's a dangerous alley for you. Okay, I remembered. Jerry nodded seriously. In his opinion, Professor McGonagall may be the kind of person with a knife mouth and a bean-curd heart. Although he looks serious most of the time, he is not inferior to anyone in Hogwarts in terms of caring for little wizards, a professor. Seeing that Jerry was so sensible, Professor McGonagall looked relaxed, and led him to continue walking in the direction of the Magic Zoo. The Magic Zoo is located between the Bouncing and Frolicking Magic Joke Shop and Gringotts. The store is not big, but there are many kinds of pets in it. As soon as Jerry stepped into the shop, he saw densely packed iron cages hanging on the entire wall. There's a big purple toad gorging on dead blowflies, a frighteningly big turtle with a shell on its back that glistens like a jewel, a white rabbit that can turn into a satin top hat at any time, and all kinds of stuff. Color cats, mice and ravens and more. Professor McGonagall, you are here, what do you need? A young witch with thick black glasses saw Professor McGonagall at the door, and immediately greeted her with a respectful tone. Pavla, I'm bringing the first graders over to buy a school pet. A small smile appeared on Professor McGonagall's face. How is it, is the work going well? Very good, the boss treats me well. What kind of pet does the little guy like? I can give you a 20% discount. The young witch helped her eyes, lowered her head and smiled and asked Jerry. Ma'am, I want a cat. Jerry scanned the entire store with his eyes, and soon found his target. Look at this gray short-haired cat, it's very docile and very suitable as a pet. Hearing this, the young witch immediately picked out the best-looking British shorts and placed them in front of Jerry. Jerry glanced at it and shook his head, then pointed at the big-faced yellow cat lying on the cage at the top of the wall and said, I like that type of cat. The cat he remembered from Hermione seemed to be a long-haired yellow cat, and the one in the entire shop that qualified now was the one he was referring to now. Crookshanks. A look of surprise appeared on the young witch's face. Because of his appearance, Crookshanks has been in the store for several years and no one wants it. She didn't expect Jerry to fall in love with him at a glance. Yes, I think it's ugly and cute, very cute. Jerry opened his eyes and replied, nonsense. That's really great. I've been worrying that it won't find a good owner. I hope you can take good care of it in the future. Pavla used to be a student of Hufflepuff at Hogwarts. Because she liked magical animals, she worked as a clerk in the magical animal store in Diagon Alley after graduation. She was happy that Crookshanks was bought by Jerry not because another business was done, but because Crookshanks had found an owner who liked it. I will try my best to take good care of it, although it is my first time to keep a pet. There was a hint of sincerity in Jerry's tone. After leaving Magic Zoo, Jerry hugged Crookshanks who was snoring in his arms, and followed Professor McGonagall to the last shop at the end of Diagon Alley. That is Ollivander's wand shop, which has been making professional wands for thousands of years. The process of choosing a wand is the same as in the movie, that is, the boss takes a measuring tape and measures it at him, and then starts to try the wand. During the process, there was nothing different from ordinary people, just like ordinary little wizards. After all, what he exchanged was normal wizard blood. After trying 2 or 3 wands, Jerry quickly found one that worked better. Alder, Dragon's Heart Nerve, 11 inches long, you must be a helpful little wizard. Looking at the wand waving in Jerry's hand, Ollivander explained with a smile. Alder is an inflexible wood, but I've found that its ideal owner is neither obstinate nor obstinate, but rather helpful, caring, and lovable wizards. Helpful. Hearing Ollivander's explanation, Jerry looked at the wand in his hand with a strange expression on his expression. After leaving Ollivander's wand shop, it was already noon. Professor McGonagall paid to take Jerry and Crookshanks to lunch at the Leaky Cauldron, and then they went to the streets of Diagon Alley again. Get smaller quickly. Jerry watched as Professor McGonagall took out his wand and pointed at the large suitcase and small trolley. A blue magic light flashed, and the full suitcase and small trolley became only the size of a palm. Okay, we should go back. Professor McGonagall picked up the large suitcase and small trolley, pocketed it, and stretched out his arm. Good. Jerry froze for a moment, then understood immediately, grabbing Professor McGonagall's outstretched arm. The follower appears. With a wave of the wand, Professor McGonagall and Jerry disappeared from the streets of Diagon Alley. Magic, what a magical power. Looking at the familiar orphanage room, Jerry couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Don't be envious. After you graduate from Hogwarts, you can easily cast these spells. Of course, the premise is that you study hard. Professor McGonagall took the large suitcase and small trolley out of his pocket, and said to Jerry after lifting the spell of reducing size. I will. Jerry put Crookshanks down and nodded with a serious expression. Of course he will study magic well, because the world he lives in is not a very safe world, and magic is the only power he can master now that can protect himself. In order to survive, he had to devote 200% of his energy to learning magic no matter what. This is your ticket to Hogwarts. On September 1st, at King's Cross Station, it's on the ticket. Your dean will drive you there by then. I've already agreed with him in advance. When the time comes, you will pay attention. Compared to Hagrid, who threw a ticket to Harry and rushed away, Professor McGonagall was much more careful. He not only told the director of the orphanage to send Jerry, but also told him that when he took the Hogwarts Express, there might be I talked to him about some of the problems. After a while, Jerry smiled and assured Professor McGonagall. Professor, I have already remembered, don't worry, I will take the Hogwarts Express train to school on time. Professor McGonagall nodded. Then see you at the beginning of school, and Mr. Carmen, I think you are very suitable for Gryffindor. After leaving the last sentence, Professor McGonagall waved his wand, apparated, and disappeared in place. The Reckless College. Seeing Professor McGonagall disappear, Jerry couldn't help showing an embarrassed look on his face. In fact, when he first knew that this was the world of Harry Potter, Gryffindor and Slytherin were the first to be ruled out, and Wenclaw was the first choice, followed by Hufflepuff. After all, his original purpose was to learn magic and improve himself in this world with peace of mind. And Gryffindor is a group of reckless people who are good at things, and they are the first to cause trouble. Slytherin has serious class conflicts, and he was born as an orphan and he is not easy to mix. Neither of the two colleges could allow him to study with peace of mind. In terms of the learning atmosphere, Ravenclaw, who uses intelligence and intelligence as the selection criteria for students, is definitely the best. They are all academic masters. If you can't get Law and Keluo, it's good to get Hufflepuff. The little wizards of Hufflepuff are generally honest and kind, at least they won't interfere with his study. However, now Professor McGonagall seems to appreciate him and wants him to go to Gryffindor, and he can earn a little star in this world, so Gryffindor seems to be considered. Forget it, there is still a month left before the branch, so let's learn a few magic spells first, so that we can deal with the car robbers and then think about it slowly. After hesitating for a while, he decided to put this question aside, and the most important thing now is to learn magic by himself. Excitedly opened the big suitcase, and took out the bag containing the textbooks, Jerry began to take out the magic books one by one and put them on the bed. Standard Spells, Beginners, A History of Magic, The Theory of Magic, A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, Magic Potions and Potions, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and the Dark Arts, A Guide to Self-Defense consists of 8 volumes. There is only 1 month before his return, so some textbooks that are not helpful in combat can be discarded first. After some thinking, Jerry put the 4 books, A History of Magic, 1,000 Magical Herbs and Mushrooms, Magic Potions and Potions, and Where to Find Fantastic Beasts, back into the book bag. History of Magic is about the history of the magic world, which can only be read as an increase in knowledge, and 1,000 Magical Herbs and Mushrooms is an introduction to various herbs. Magic Potions and Potions is very useful. Powerful potions can play an auxiliary role in battle, but in a month, he can't teach himself how to configure potions, and he doesn't have the materials to make powerful potions. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a book explaining all kinds of magical creatures. If he goes out for adventures in the future, he may use it, but forget it now. With Standard Spells, Elementary, Magic Theory, Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, and Black Magic, A Guide to Self-Defense, Jerry left Magic Theory alone, and put the other 3 together first. On the table. For a magic novice, Jerry feels that he must first know what magic is and how it works before he can learn related spells. And Magic Theory, a book explaining basic theories, is what he needs to study most now. Seriously picking up Magic Theory, and sitting on the chair, Jerry took a deep breath and slowly turned the first page. To tamper with the deepest secrets at will, the source of life, the essence of self, must be prepared to suffer the most extreme and dangerous consequences. Woflin's Basic Rule of Magic, First Rule. Quote, 4 hours later, Jerry closed Magic Theory, rubbed his temples, and couldn't help sighing. Hermione Granger, you are worthy of being a master of the generation, she is really amazing. Originally, Jerry thought that he was also a person who had gone through the college entrance examination, and his learning ability was not bad in all aspects, and he had lived for more than 40 years, so his life experience was not insignificant. He should be able to handle the most basic magic theory. But the truth is a slap in the face. As a completely unfamiliar knowledge system, without the guidance of a teacher, Jerry taught himself for 4 hours, feeling as if he was reading a Bible. It's like a mortal who suddenly got a secret book that can cultivate into an immortal. Without the guidance of a master, it is as difficult to comprehend every word by himself. That's why he sighed when he thought that Hermione, an 11-year-old girl, had learned most of her first-year magic before school started without any guidance. Maybe Hermione was just that kind of prodigy and genius in the field of magic, and he was just a normal human being. I just hope that Little Red Star's refreshing function can be more powerful, otherwise it will be troublesome. According to the introduction on the panel, Little Red Star can not only allow him to experience life in the magical world of Harry Potter, but also enable the refreshing function, which is to let his brain learn, understand and remember, are all strengthened. Of course, the specific extent to which it can be strengthened is not detailed on the panel, and he needs to experience it himself to be sure. Now, he felt that if he relied on his own ability to learn, even if he complained of 200% energy, it would take a month to barely learn the simplest magic. Therefore, if you want to have a good fighting ability before returning, it is very important to consume the refreshing function activated by Little Red Star. Gulu. After rubbing his growling stomach, Jerry looked at the already dark sky. He thought he could wait until he finished his dinner, and then try the refreshing function of Little Red Star. Crookshanks, let's go to dinner. Standing up from the chair, Jerry was about to invite his first pet, Crookshanks, to have dinner with him, but he found that Crookshanks, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, had long since disappeared. Wouldn't this be running away? Under the bed, in the box, in the cupboard, he searched around the house but couldn't find Crookshanks. Jerry couldn't help scratching his head helplessly. Speaking of which, he just read the book too seriously, and he didn't pay much attention to what happened around him. At this moment, Jerry suddenly felt a cool wind blowing into his neck from behind, which made him shiver. Looking back slowly, I saw Crookshanks standing outside the window at some point, very cleverly pulled the window out of a gap with his claws, then got in through the gap, and closed the window sill tightly with his claws. The cool breeze just came when Crookshanks opened the window. Meow! Crookshanks excitedly ran up to Jerry, put the thing in his mouth on the ground, and pushed it in front of Jerry with his paws. It's like saying, I am your master today. This is the food that the master rewarded you. Eat it quickly. Crookshanks, thank you. Jerry looked at the dead mouse pushed to his feet, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. No wonder the witch said that Crookshanks was so easy to feed that she didn't even bother to prepare food for him. After dinner, Jerry sat down at the desk again and reopened Magic Theory. Use Little Red Star. After clicking on the refreshing function on the panel, Jerry gasped instantly. He only felt a cool air, which suddenly poured directly into his brain from Baihui Acupoint. The brain, which had become more and more sluggish due to a busy day, immediately returned to its best state after the infusion of this cool air. He now feels like he sleeps deeply for 8 or 9 hours at night, and wakes up in the morning with a cold drink. The mind is very clear, and the brain is abnormally active. Lowering his head and starting to study Magic Theory again, Jerry only felt that the obscure knowledge of Magic Theory in the afternoon suddenly became easier. It seems that the original high number calculus, after using the refreshing function of Little Red Star, becomes a linear equation in one variable, and the difficulty is instantly reduced by several levels. Or, to be more precise, his brain comprehension ability and learning and memory ability have improved several levels, so the difficult calculus has become as simple as a one-dimensional equation in his eyes. With the refreshing blessing, Jerry's speed of reading Magic Theory was much faster. Originally, it took more than 4 hours in the afternoon, and he barely managed to read 4 or 5 pages, and he still couldn't fully understand it. But now, under the blessing of refreshing the mind, he has read a quarter of the book, Magic Theory, in just 1 hour, and he has almost completely understood it. Stop. 4 hours later, when Jerry finished reading the entire Magic Theory, and remembered his understanding, he temporarily turned off the refreshing function on the panel. Without the blessing of refreshing the mind, his brain returned to a normal state again, and at the same time, a strong sense of fatigue also hit him. It seems that using the refreshing function not only consumes the little red star, but also overdraws the brain power. It seems that I will buy a few boxes of 6 walnuts in the future. At this time, Jerry realized that although the refreshing function is powerful, it is not a small burden on his body. He hurriedly closed the book, got up and lay down on the bed, and within 2 seconds, he fell into the deepest sleep. Next morning, when the first ray of sunlight hit Jerry's face through the window, he slowly opened his eyes. After a night of deep sleep, the brain returned to its normal state again. Next time I can't use it for so long at once. I used it for the first time yesterday, because the refreshing state was so wonderful that he couldn't help but turn it on for 4 hours. Although he read and understood the entire Magic Theory in one go, it also overwhelmed his brain, and he fell into a deep sleep mode after barely persisting for a long time. Therefore, it is obviously unwise to turn on the refreshing function for a long time. The overuse of the brain will make his body instinctively enter deep sleep, because deep sleep can better restore his brain. But in deep sleep, even if there is thunder outside, he will not have any reaction, which means that he will have no vigilance at all in that situation. In case of danger, it is a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Opening the panel, Jerry checked the number of little red stars he had consumed after turning on refreshing. 240. In other words, 1 little red star is consumed every minute. Last night, the refreshing function was turned on for a total of 4 hours, consuming 240 little red stars, which is equivalent to consuming 1 little red star every minute. On the whole, it's okay, but it didn't surprise him too much. There were a total of 1005 little red stars on his panel before, but 240 were consumed yesterday, and there are 765 left. In conversion, the refreshing function can be turned on for nearly 13 hours. According to the previous Magic Theory, which took about 4 hours to master, the remaining 3 books are Standard Spells, Elementary, Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, and Dark Magic, A Guide to Self-Defense. It can be read quickly in about 13 hours. That is to say, his current number of little red stars should barely allow him to complete his original 1-month study plan ahead of schedule in the next 2 or 3 days by indirectly relying on the acceleration function of improving the brain. Thanks for watching, subscribe and support my channel.